All right, so we're recording again. My name is Luke Angstead. This is my podcast, Knowledge Wars. I'm the author of the book, The Musings of De La Pew. It's a 20-year investigation into the nature of reality, the nature of God, human beings, existence, the relationship between all of them. It's available on Amazon. You can also see the details for the links to Amazon in the description page for this video on YouTube and Rumble. It's been a little bit since we've done a recording, but I'm back here with some recurring guests. I have Bob and Danielle on the show today again. And Bob mentioned to me a few days ago that he and Danielle had been getting into an involved conversation over religion, whether it's specifically Christianity or just religion in general and the nature of belief. And they were discussing the deception, the deception in the Bible, if that's fair for me to say, Bob. And Bob also approached the subject to me that he thought that this would be a great place for us to continue the conversation the next time we were able to get a group of us on the Zoom call. So I guess with no further ado, I have Bob here again and Danielle, and whichever one of you, Bob, Danielle, whoever wants to, bring me up to speed with where you were at with your conversation last week. Please do so.
Well, it's hard to know where to start, but I know that Bob, for your listeners, I'm sorry, my voice sounds crazy. But Bob had asked a couple of questions, and each question that he had asked, I can't remember exactly how he put it. He would say, "What are your thoughts?" And I'm like, this is not one of those things where I can simply give you 2 lines and that's it. So the poor guy would get all this stuff on his text. But anyway, I started to reveal some things to him that I had found. Now, to mind you, it's been maybe about 2 years that I started really stumbling across some things that bothered me. Studying the Bible for about 11 or 12 years. I mean, hungry as anything in it every day, unless something came up. I mean, I pretty much was in the Bible every day. I got journals upon journals under my bed because I would journal, write down stuff. And, I grew up Catholic. So it was always you never question God. But I felt as a born again Christian, I had that kind of relationship where God, if I had a question, I'd ask him, So there were things that just didn't line up for me. It bothered me, mainly in the Old Testament. And I would look at the Strong Concordance, and translations weren't lining up. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I started finding some people on YouTube that big names like Jordan Maxwell, Mario Biglino, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, and stuff like that. So
Danielle, I just had to interject one quick thing. What version of the Bible are you reading? Because the translations, this is a great point you bring up, because especially since the beginning of the 20th century, there has been a concerted effort to change specific words that have crucial meanings in their context in the Bible, and you switch a word here and there, it changes the entire meaning.
Very subtly,
very subtly.
So easy to do.
So which version, what in translations do you study? Which ones do you read?
I have a bunch of different Bibles because I wasn't okay with just one. So my first Bible I ever got was the NIV, but then I had the King James version. I had a Compass version. I have a ton of versions. I even have my mom's Catholic Bible. So I have a bunch of different versions. And so I was looking in each one of them, because some of them would actually have the word Elohim right in it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then some of them just said God. Some would say Nephilim in there. Some would not say Nephilim. They would say giants, for example. So I was like, okay, I get it. These are different translations. Why don't we go and see what the Septuagint says, or the stuff like that. Now, mind you, I'm not a scholar. I know I said this before. I wouldn't consider myself a brain, but I have common sense. And so when something doesn't line up, I'm not satisfied with just going, well, that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? I start digging. 2 years, was I upset for digging? Yes, it bothered me. I had what you call maybe the dark night of the soul, because holy crap, there's so much stuff in here that's like crazy. I said to Bob, I said, in Revelation, and I'm not going to say this, to the T, but it says, do not add or take away. As soon as you bring this up to another Christian, they'll go, oh, no, you're not supposed to add or take away from the Bible. There's no way. Come on now. Do you think these evil people to abide by what the Bible says? And who's to say that somebody didn't throw that in there? Now, I'm not saying
that verse thing. I think it relates specifically to Revelation. I think it deals specifically with the revelation of John. Yeah. But I'm sorry, but continue. But this is a good conversation to have, because there were so many layers, and so I mean, it's not easy to make that determination, because I thought that for quite some time that it referred to the entire Bible, but then someone pointed out to me that it's dealing specifically with Revelation. Not to say that I'm right and I'm wrong, but I mean there's so much ambiguity, right? But the point is there are so many places where there's so much ambiguity where you could take it so many different ways, and then if you take one fork in the road, well, then you're going this way, and then you meet another ambiguity where you're looking at two different translations of the Bible, and there are differences in words where the derivations and the modern day meanings of the words are drastically different from each other. And you're like, well, wait a second, well, where do I go with this? Again, another ambiguity. And then if you go this way in the fork of the road, it takes you somewhere else. So it's, to what you've said in the beginning, it's not easy, and I completely understand.
No. And honestly, it makes more sense that it's specifically for Revelation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
You're right, because to your point, Danielle, for the longest time, well, myself included, but so many still now, they read that text and they just take for granted that that's set in stone. Like, cursed is the man that adds or takes away from this book. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, okay, well, nobody has ever done that. Like, are you kidding? Like you just said, are you kidding me? You know, like, but that's how we take it, right? Or used to anyway. Most people still do. So when you start to question things and sort of read between the lines in Revelation and be like, where are we at and what's happening? Like you've told me before, a lot of so-called Christians, and sometimes you wonder, are like, well, you're going down the wrong path, and you're sort of being misguided and misled and deceived.
And on that specific point, on that specific point in Revelation, it's easy to lose track of the fact that the Bible is a compilation of many books, and there have been many moments in time where church elders and their various elect and the people, the deacons, and not even deacons, but I mean the higher up in the church, they've made the decisions to either add or subtract books, like the First and Second Maccabees. I mean the Book of Enoch, for example. But I mean there have been times where the Bible decided to remove these books and add these books. So, I mean it's a compilation, and in the 21st century we can easily lose track of the fact that the Bible is a compilation of 66 books, written by, what was it, upwards of I don't know, I forget how many individual authors who are in the Bible. But anyway, Danielle, we kind of got sidetracked here, but I wanted you to pick up the thread that you were at before.
Yeah, no, it's all good. There was something I was going to say, and I think I lost track of it. So,
but you were finding different in the different translations of the Bible. You were coming across crucial moments in the text where there were words that had drastically different definitions in our present day that took you into radically different interpretations depending upon which way you took it. And oftentimes there wasn't a lot of circumstantial evidence, a satisfactory circumstantial evidence to lend one interpretation more credence than the other one, and that can lead to a psychological and spiritual crisis.
Yeah, like for example, I think early on when I was born again, I went to my small group, and I had what brought me to Christ was the New Testament. I had started reading that, John.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, things I was like, oh, wow, so I'm listening to how Jesus talked about the Father, and it just was amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then once I got through the New Testament, I started reading the Old Testament. I remember asking the girl, I'm like, how come the God in the Old Testament seems so different than the God in the New Testament. It was very upsetting to me as a Christian, because I felt like I was seeing multiple personalities. And I know it sounds weird, but that's how I felt. As you go further into the Old Testament, you're seeing genocide and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's just killing off all these people. Um, so just to give you a little background on that, it had led me to L.A. Marzulli years later, who comes up with the whole Nephilim thing and the meaning behind that. Because before I became a Christian, I read Zechariah Stitchin and stuff like that. Whether his stuff is accurate or not, it's just my, it's what I had read. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm curious to see what somebody's take on the Nephilim.
And for our audience, Danielle, since you mentioned Zechariah, I've read everything that he published.
I still got a bunch of his
he popularized the ancient astronaut. That the Sumerians in the
Planet X
cuneiform text, either they were the greatest science fiction authors of all time, or this Earth has been visited, more times than we can count by extraterrestrials that are genetically and their genetics and their DNA is very similar to the human beings, but it's slightly different because they are extraterrestrial. But the evidence is overwhelming for his. I mean, even using the word theory is wrong, but I mean, I would say for a guy.
I think he's on to something.
I know he's on to something. Yeah, I absolutely know he's on to something. I think it's hard not to see the ancient alien, ancient astronaut evidence in the Bible too. Specifically,
and they very well, maybe they're not extraterrestrial, maybe they're interdimensional.
Interdimensional too, absolutely, yeah, because we open up a whole other can of worms of whether or not we're living in a simulation, or is this world even real? I mean, what is the definition of real? But again, it opens up a whole the rabbit hole just gets deeper and deeper.
And that's why I'm trying to be so careful what I bring up just in this conversation, because I mean, I got pages of notes that I took, and there's no way we would even get through it all in the amount of time that we have.
Well, let's take our time, and we can always be to be continued. I don't want to rush it. So
that's true. That's true. And as far as time goes, I'm always good on it, but we also don't want to bore people for too long, right? But and not to mention computer memory, but I will bring this up. I remember what I was going to say before I start getting into that. One of the things I had noticed a couple years ago, to bring it a little closer to the future, is I started digging with words and it was bothering me. So then I was like, okay, how did the Bible even come together? So how did they put this together? It was one thing I never, ever asked, right? And even as an unbeliever, I never, thought or cared about it. And so I went and I did some digging, and I found that the Nicaea, the Council of the Nicaea put it together with Constantine leading it. You may already know this, but I'm out there for your viewers. And I don't have the exact date, but it was like 300 and something years after Jesus died.
It was around like 325, I think, AD.
I think you're on the nail on the head. So he got a whole bunch of religious leaders together. They all brought all their little texts that they had. And basically what he did, is going to sound crazy, but he threw the stuff on the table, and whatever landed on the table went in the Bible, and whatever didn't, they burned. So who knows how much teachings was like, and we know in Rome's history, they're the victors usually. They fell. And so they were good at wiping out history, changing history. And don't even get me started, Josephus. That'll be a whole nother topic. But when I saw that, I was like, well, holy crap, that's a lot of years after. And then you wonder how many of those teachings were actually like first person, or with Jesus that they may have lost. Did they take anything and manipulate it? Like just even who he was, did they make him into something he may have not been? I don't know. These were the questions that were going on in my head. So I went back to the thing that bothered me the most, and I went into Genesis, the start of it. And And Elohim, I noticed the word for God was Elohim in the beginning of Genesis. Funny, in the beginning, I no pun intended. But and he said they had God as Elohim. And so when you break down the word Elohim, El is God, and Ohim is like using the letter S on the end of something to make it plural. So basically, Elohim's plural. So that means the gods or gods. So then I noticed with Elohim or El, all the archangels have EL at the end of them. To me, I don't believe in coincidences. So I'm like, well, we're writing that down. That's interesting. And so I started looking. There's also
We're all astute observations, Danielle, and you should be commended for it because it is. I mean, you're a great student.
oh, well, thank you, because I
Student.
always think about I'm not that smart.
No, that shows astuteness right there, big time.
I just, I love whatever you want to call them, source, the force, universal, God, the Father.
Mhm.
I always felt that connection to him, and things weren't lining up to me, and it just bothered me, and that's why I dug. Then I looked further on in Genesis, and I noticed like man has become like us, knowing good and evil, or let us make man in our likeness. Now, people may say, well, it's the Trinity.
Yeah.
Do I have with the Trinity? And it's not so much the Christian Trinity I'm pointing out. It's just that there's many Trinities. There's Horus, Isis, and Osiris. Then you have Hindu, they have a Trinity. So if you look on the cultures, they have a Trinity. So you're like, okay, wait a minute, this is confusing, and God's not the author of confusion. What's going on here? Kept digging, and and I noticed some things also in Genesis where it says, and the earth was without form and void. Well, that means earth was there already. So it wasn't like poof, earth. So it's not really talking about a creation of earth. It's talking about creating what needs to be on earth. So to me, it almost sounded like something being terraformed, which I was like, wait a minute, am I reading this right? So I'm going over and over and over.
But there's another one where I guess it's a great opportunity to split hairs here too.
Yeah.
Because you said that the earth was without form. I mean, just that right there, the earth was without form. Well, anything without form is spirit, right? I mean, there's nothing, in order for something to be physically there, what we have our traditional understanding of what the word physical means. I mean, it has form. So anything without form, I mean, that opens up a whole other can of worms too. I mean, are we just in the spiritual realm? Are we in some
and that's where my mind was going. I'm like,
in the world of thought. So I mean, again, we talk about those forks in the road and the ambiguity, and if we choose one direction, it's going to take us somewhere else entirely. But I mean, it's hard with the language right there. And the earth was without form. It's like, what does that mean? Right? I mean,
that's when you look up the translation.
Yeah, not an easy question.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what I found, and it matched up with a lot of the guys that I started looking at later, is what it really means is that the earth became a waste and a desolation. So I'm like, whoa, hold up. So it means the earth was there, and something happened and it laid it to waste. And now a being, whatever, whether it's God or gods, or I'm at this point panicking. So that's when I start watching some people to see what, people have been doing it for years upon years upon years, like Mario Biglino, if anybody is interested.
I'm familiar with him,
He was actually hired by the Vatican. He's Italian. His name. And he doesn't speak the best English, so usually has translators for him when you're watching him, but he's getting better. But he was hired by the Vatican to do translations. And when he came in to do it, because he's like one of the best, he going through their text, because they hide everything down in in the Vatican. So he was stumbling across stuff that was very similar to what Zachariah Stitchin was getting. Maybe
Yeah.
it was a little different,
Mhm.
but which was interesting. And Jordan Maxwell, he got the same translation about it being a waste and a desolation.
Mhm.
So I thought that was interesting. It was upsetting because I was like, okay, this is not, most Christians, when they read the Bible, they'll read it exactly what it says, literally. There's some things in the Bible that are more metaphorical. There's some stuff that's symbolic. And then there's some stuff that they would say would be historical, maybe like King of Kings and stuff like that. And
How many lifetimes does it take to determine what's symbolic, what is literal, what is an allegory, what is right? I mean, that takes numerous lifetimes, and even getting back to there was something right on the tip of my tongue with the as far as when you said as far as that the world was that the earth was in desolation. I mean, that again, it brings the first conjecture pops into my mind is what lays the earth desolate is a nuclear war. And the reason why I bring up the nuclear wars, we're coming back to Zechariah
very well
6
could have been.
and talking about the Sodom and Gomorrah and how the description of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah sounds a lot like
Definitely
a nuclear war.
nuclear.
And we also see in that part of the world, you could even see it from outer space, the way the earth is scorched. I mean, there is still evidence that would lead us to very plausibly believe that there was a nuclear war, and that the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is describing nuclear warfare. And obviously, Zechariah Sitchin gets into the minutia and the painstaking detail in the cuneiform text, and also the images in the cuneiform text that look a lot like nuclear warheads, right? So I mean, it's not. And on the face of it, if somebody's new to this subject, it sounds like the wildest speculation in science fiction. But when you get into the details of it, and when you see someone who's like was a guy like Zachariah Sitchin who studied this for 30 years before he went public with it. I mean, the guy, he was 56 when he published his first book, The 12th Planet. You say to yourself, well, here's somebody who's not looking to make a quick dollar, and to spend 30 years. And when you look at the great detail that he gets into it, it's a valid. And now we use the word theory, but even the word theory isn't right anymore, because I mean the evidence is overwhelming for what he said. I mean, he could be wrong. I mean, right? There's still the possibility that he's not necessarily he hit the nail on the head, but the evidence is overwhelming, and his argument and the way he assembles the evidence and interprets the evidence is damn convincing, is it not? Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Mind blowing. And in fact, Jordan Maxwell, who rest in peace. He passed this year, and he's one of my favorite guys. And he cracked me up. I'm gonna have to say this because I think this is great. I think your listeners will enjoy it if they don't know Jordan Maxwell. But he would say when he was a kid, when he first started questioning things, I think it was his confirmation. So if you know Catholic Church date, you make your Holy Communion in 3rd grade, and then around 7th grade, you get your confirmation. And you're given like a new name. It's your confirmation name and stuff. So asked if anybody wanted to get ask a question, but they were all told that no, if you're asked that, if you have a question, you don't ask anything. That's what they were told. But Jordan, he still asked. And so he said, okay, can you set an angel on fire? And I think it was the bishop or something. And he said, no, they're spirit. You can't turn angel on fire because they're spirit. And he said, out of the mouths of babes, he said, well, that's the case. Why am I so worried about being burned in hell? And I was like,
no.
I could totally see my son asking that.
That's a good one.
But anyway, it was just, I loved his personality. You know what I mean? Now, for anybody out there, I'm not saying hell doesn't exist. I'm just saying what he said. Again, I am still trying to figure out what is up. I'll get to this part here just to go along with that.
And to your point, even with the Bible, there's very little mention of hell or heaven. I mean, I mean, as far
They
as
talk about Sheol.
yeah, I mean, there's a
And
lot.
that's kind of like a resting place.
Yeah, but there's very little descriptive language about
Yeah,
that.
there is.
You know, a lot of it's about money. It's about. I mean, the Bible talks about money and life right here, and I mean, how to live your life right here on earth.
And I
right?
think a lot of it is assumption, don't you think?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I do. Yeah, yeah, I absolutely do. And it's wild. I mean, the church has taken wild conjecture to drive in the fear and the terror of eternal damnation, because it's
And
almost like a
that's-
passing. It's almost like a byword in the Bible. It's like, I mean, there isn't great emphasis put on eternal damnation.
just weeping and gnashing of teeth. but
Weeping
that
and gnashing of
could be
teeth. Yeah.
anything, you know what I mean? That
Mhm.
could be a separation from God, maybe, or
Yeah.
just, you know,
Mhm.
thing.
But the emphasis is not on the psychological torture of being in a place of fire and brimstone.
Fire, no.
And what's that? The
Yeah.
emphasis, the emphasis in the Bible isn't on that, isn't on the psychological
Mm-mm.
torture. No.
Yep. Agreed. And I think a lot of it is for control.
Yeah.
And just the Christian religion, it's a lot of religions have it like now granted these three faiths are very similar because Christianity came out of Judaism, and then you have Islam. So you know what, one thing I noticed about Genesis was it's very close to the word genetics.
Good point. Excellent point.
I pay attention to words.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I said to Bob one time, I'm like, words are spells.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I know that sounds crazy, but
Not at all. Not at all. That's why we spell them.
yeah. That's where you get the word spelling,
Mm-hmm.
how we spell words. Yeah. So when you pay attention to words like that, your mind's like, whoa, they've coded everything. There's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's codes. And I think there's a lot of codes in the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know there are. Yeah.
The
12. I mean, the 12 disciples. I mean, Jesus enters the temple at the age of 12 again. I mean, we're dealing with the houses of the zodiac, obviously. I mean, December 25th. I mean, the 3 days when the sun rises at the same angle on the horizon is what, December 22nd, 23rd, 24th. Those are the other
That's funny,
days
I have that down.
either descending on the horizon or it's either ascending on the horizon, but those are the 3 days where it's not. And it just happens to be December 25th, the day when it starts rising again on the horizon.
Again. And that's why we have Christmas. And that's a pagan holiday.
Yeah.
I mean, and
before we get down too many, Danielle,
Easter.
I just wanted to throw it out here, but just because I want to have a smooth transition, because I think this was a great start to this conversation. I'd love to have Bob on. I know, Bob, you said that you were just going to listen for most of this and chime in when you can, but I thought this was a great start. The reason I thought this is because we're at 2.5 minutes, and I didn't want to get, I didn't want you to get cut off mid-thought, or I didn't want Bob to be able to chime in at the end and want to continue a thought and get cut off, because I wanted to try to make a more of a smoother transitions into the next call. But I think this was great, Bob. I'd love to have you. I mean, I know you did. If you want to come on with this one with Danielle again and continue this conversation, because there's always going to be a moment where there's a eureka moment where it's like, hey, this connected for something that you were thinking about for years or for whatever the case may be. So I feel like this is something that we should take our time with, right? And
it's not something you can rush
here, but I would love to continue this in greater detail. Bob, how do you feel?
Oh yeah, no, I've enjoyed it, even though I'm not saying a whole lot. I've enjoyed it. And for any Christian out there listening to the show, it's okay to question, right? There might have been a time in my life that I would not be I know there would have been a time in my life that I would not be comfortable with this conversation, but I'm sitting here and I'm thinking of all the things, a lot of stuff I've never heard about. However, I know God knows me. I am a born again Christian. There is nothing that's going to change that. I experience that every single day in my life. It's personal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too many people, and this might sound terrible, worship the book, right? So you got a Bible there and it's like, that is the word of God. There is nothing else to say. That's it. Don't question it. And
Yeah.
I know God, right? And so what would we do without the Bible, right? God still connects with our soul, with our spirit deep inside, and tells us things that no human could. And so I'm good with that, whether I agree with you guys or not. I'm open-minded to be like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm good with it, because I will not be swayed from the love that I have in Jesus Christ. And I'm good with it. So everything else it's good. And I think God's okay with that too. Of course he is. I think he's more than okay with that.
All right. So I think we're going to get cut off here in about the next 15 seconds or so, because it's been less than a minute for more than 30 seconds. So I think this is a great place to say to be continued. And it was a great start for an ongoing conversation with this.
All right.
All right, Danielle, Bob, I will see you later. We'll continue this.
See you guys. See you next time. Have a great
See
day.
ya.
Bye.